Welcome to the All Things Endurance podcast. I'm your host, Rick Prince, and I'm excited to have on the podcast today Jonathan Levitt. Jonathan and I met back in his days at Inside Tracker, where he was a senior sales executive and was there for almost 11 years. Um, Jonathan is now the founder of Run Long Labs, a podcast. He's also an endurance athlete. And one of the things, or the main thing we're going to be talking about today is transitioning from a full-time job, in Jonathan's case, Inside Tracker, to doing his own thing. Because I know a lot of our coaches are sort of in similar positions. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Of course, thanks for having me. Obviously familiar with what you've been doing at UASCA for years now, and excited for a chat here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, aside from that sort of little intro I gave, maybe you could tell some of the listeners a little bit more about yourself, maybe your sport background, your work background, and just
Yeah,
you in general.
sure. So I got into running in 2013. I was doing a little bit of running after I graduated college in 2012, like 7 or 8 miles a week total across 3 runs. Boston Marathon bombing happened, and I was inspired to run. The next day was my first half marathon. It was my first stress fracture. I went couch to half marathon, back to couch.
Okay.
And from there, I just fell off the deep end, and really, really loved it. I ended up working in the space. Many of my customers and ambassadors I worked with were runners. And so I just wanted to explore more and see what running a marathon was like, so I could connect better, and really just fell in love with the training process. I joined Inside Tracker in 2014, quite early on in the personalized nutrition era, and we really grew up in the running space, particularly trail, where people were using blood testing and blood analytics as a way to understand why they weren't feeling good and how they could sort of bulletproof their routine in order to perform at their best. And then the conversation kind of evolved into, well, if you want to do what you love for longer, this is also a way to, improve your health and longevity and health span as well. So I was meeting some really interesting people, a lot of professional athletes, pro trail runners, pro marathoners, etc. And I became obsessed with asking why. Why are you doing this? What are you doing? What's the goal? How do you love this so much? Um, and I started a podcast to record those conversations. And that was January of 2019. I thought I was late to podcasting at the time. So that podcast was called For the Long Run. And I'm 385 episodes into it. I just
Wow.
released a conversation with Scott Jurek. So it's fun to be able to have these types of conversations with people who have been doing it at a high level for a very long time, and understand what we can learn from it. So that was 6 years ago. Um, I began having a lot more conversations around the overlap of endurance and entrepreneurship over the last year in particular, as I've become more involved with startups, other startups, advising brands, investing in brands, and really just understanding that space, that early stage space a bit more. And so I started having these conversations on For the Long Run, and I got feedback that, hey, that's not what I'm here for. I want to hear about mental performance and the why. I said, okay, that's interesting. Well, I'm going to continue to have these conversations. Maybe I should start another podcast. So started Long Run Labs I launched it on June 18th or June 11th. It was June 11th, with 3 episodes, um, at the intersection of endurance and entrepreneurship. And so that conversation is, with founders, builders, marketers, people in the space who are doing a thing, and I'm telling their stories and then talking shop. So it's 10 minutes of intro, and the rest is talking shop. So I'm doing that. I'm also doing some brand and sponsorship building for a collective of 14 podcasts, reaching a quarter million impressions on a monthly basis, about 3 million annually. And then I'm building uh, a community for early stage founders and entrepreneurs and solopreneurs called The Huddle, with a couple of friends, including Jason Fitzgerald, who many people listening might know of his top podcast, Strength Running Podcast. And so we're building this community for people who are builders, operators, founders in the space who want to increase their efficiency and want to learn. And we're creating this place where everyone can learn from each other and curating a network effect of, we can all be better based on that. And yeah, so long intro of who I am and what I'm working on.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, I can certainly say as a small business owner, I think entrepreneurship, certainly at a relatively small level or small company level can be very lonely, and yeah, you can seek out advisors and mentors and all those kind of things, but to kind of have that sort of collective that you're trying to build, or I should say that you are building, I think is really much needed because I certainly, sitting in my home office here sometime with my son's pet hamster as my only colleague, locally here in the office. It can get a little lonely.
So that's exactly where the idea came from Jason to build the huddle because like you, he's been doing this by himself for 13 years. And we have a lot of conversations on the run where we poke and prod and workshop each other's businesses and really just enhance what we're doing. We create a lot of value for and from each other in those, 2 hour conversations. And so the idea he came up with this idea because he was like, I want to surround myself with these types of people and have these types of conversations. So initially it was like, let's make a Slack community that just helps people learn from each other. And that evolved into let's have curated curriculum where we're helping each other solve problems on a monthly basis in a real meeting environment. um, because so many people are operating individually and stumbling through the same hurdles and building blocks that or roadblocks that other people have navigated before. So why not learn from each other?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, I can definitely say if I had a community like that, I probably could have chopped at least maybe even being conservative, a couple years off of my, growth cycle in,
Exactly.
just from all the screw ups I made, so
That is the goal. That is
yeah.
the goal. We're launching in September, so we'd love to have you join.
Yeah, awesome. I'll be there, man. That is awesome. So so how did you come to the decision to leave Inside Tracker? It sounds like you loved having these conversations with, with athletes and founders. Because being with the company for 10 years, almost 11 years, that's a long time to be with a company and then to kind of say, okay, I'm gonna shift off and do my own thing. So what was sort of the aha moment for you that said, okay, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna go off on my own.
I had so many people in my ear telling me that I was silly to not consider it,
Mm,
and that like there was so much more value that I could offer and much more enjoyment that I could have. I did 8 years of consumer sales. I learned a ton. I did 2.5 years of enterprise sales. I learned a ton. I met some amazing people. I learned incredible lessons about business and growth and nutrition and performance. And I have my experience at Insight Tracker to thank for molding me into the person I am today. Professionally and personally. I joined when I was 24. I was a totally different person at 24 versus I'm going to be 35 in a few weeks. Um, and yeah, it just got to a point where I was getting more excited about the stuff I was building personally and on the side. And I was like, okay, well, I've had a moderate amount of success doing this in 10% of my time. What if I spent 100% of my time doing
yeah.
this? Like, would I enjoy it more? Would the impact be more? Can I impact? Um, can I have a bigger impact financially and value creation wise for a lot of people? And then there were a lot of things that I wanted to do that I didn't feel that I could do with a full time job, like build this
Mm,
podcast collective and market it, um, and build the huddle. And so those two things are separate. Build the huddle and like give an honest effort in building a real business. I didn't feel it was fair or appropriate to do that with a full time job, and still manage to put the points on the board that I needed to. For the last couple of years, I've been hitting my quota, and I've been doing what has been expected of me, while doing all these other things. And it got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like
mm.
I want to go all in. And a particular conversation I had with Ian McGregor from Scratch, he's the CEO of Scratch. We chatted for an hour, and I was in this period of like, I can't figure out how to take the leap. And I was
Mm,
asking anyone who would listen to me, like who had made a change or something in their career. I was like, how did you do it? How did you pivot? How did you take a leap, bet on yourself? And Ian walked me through an exercise of four quadrants or zones of excellence. And the top left corner is like you're good at something and you're paid well, but it's not like it doesn't bring you flow. It doesn't bring you fulfillment, but you're good at it and you get paid well. And the top right quadrant is um, basically you're good at it, you're paid well, and um, it's stimulating. And it's not you don't just like zone out, and you can do the thing. And so he's like, the danger is that many of us live in these zones where we're good at something and we get complacent because good enough is kind of the worst possible um, place to be, because it doesn't inspire growth, it doesn't inspire learning or pushing yourself or whatever. um, and if you're getting paid well to do it, like what's the point of pushing yourself harder, right?
sure.
And so it was that, and it was another conversation he had where he was like, and this is the part that I think is probably relevant to your audience. He was like, I don't, he's like, I don't intend to, or I don't claim to know your financial situation, but like, if you didn't make any money for 3 months, like you won't be homeless. And I was like, yeah, that's correct. So I put myself in a position where I could take a bet on myself, and it wouldn't bankrupt me and destroy me if I didn't do it, if I didn't see the impact I was looking for. And at the same time, when I quit my job, I was not starting from zero.
Hmm.
So I think the lesson there is like build something slowly on the side until it becomes something that, like, let's say you're putting 10% of your time into it. If it's the kind of thing that if you 5x that or 10x that, and you would get a higher yield, then you owe it to yourself to give it a try. Currently, I'm doing probably four different things that I don't think so. Collectively, they take up a week. I'm also doing some consulting with a brand that maybe we can talk about later, but um, nothing I'm doing is 40 hours a week. And some of the things I'm doing right now, if I spent 40 hours in a week, it would not deliver a linear improvement. So
Hmm.
if I'm making X from spending X amount of time and I 5x the time, I don't think I would 5x the income. And so for me, it's been critical to have a handful of different things that I can dip my hands into and push things forward at different timelines and timeframes, so that I can put food on my table, pay my
Yeah.
mortgage, do the things I want to do, travel, all this stuff, while feeling comfortable enough that, like, it's not all going to fall apart, in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. The whole I think you made, I mean, all of them were good points, but I think from where I'm sitting, you know, getting something going while you're in your full-time job, so you have some momentum there, but also to be, to diversify. Like you said, it could be really, I think so many people say, okay, I'm going to start this one thing when I quit my job, or I'm going to focus on this one thing. And I think to have the diversity that you do where you're working on multiple projects, so you're not hedging everything that, okay, this thing has to work or else I'm out on the street, I think is super, super an intelligent way to go about it in a way that I think most people don't usually consider, at least people I've talked to.
Yeah, and it's a place of abundance versus scarcity, because I don't feel that any one thing needs to be wildly successful.
Yeah,
And that influences how I act and behave as it relates to those things, right? So if I'm only chasing brand deals for a bunch of podcasts, I live or die by the success of that. So I'm going to
sure.
absolutely hammer outbound. I'm going to be relentless in in getting answers and getting to yes or getting to no, and I'm going to burn myself out doing that. And this kind of stuff is all at the mercy of somebody else, right?
Yep.
I don't create my own destiny when it comes to somebody else's marketing budget. Or somebody could leave their job and all of a sudden my contact at this brand is no longer. And so it creates a different relationship with the activity itself if I don't live or die by any one thing. And so it just relieves the pressure for things to go for me to need things to go a certain way if I can, right? Like the other piece is like my income projections. Some months could be really high and some months could be low, and I have to be able to weather that storm
Yep.
from a cash flow perspective. And so the ability to have a bunch of different irons in the fire enables that to happen. I think from a coaching perspective, having predictable monthly income is a um, really strong opportunity, right? You have 10 athletes, 20 athletes, 30 athletes who are paying you a certain amount every month. That's your baseline. That's your insurance policy, and what else could be added on top of that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in to that point, I think that there's, for lack of a better word, there is a lot of hustle involved, with starting any business for sure, but especially when it comes to diversification.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. So, understandably so, when it comes to, going full time, leaving your full-time job, starting up in a startup situation, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of trepidation, there's a lot of hesitancy. How did you handle that?
Um, I'm like irrationally optimistic, perhaps. I think it takes some kind of dumb um I don't know if it's ignorance or like confidence or something. Um, I'm doing some consulting for a brand called Eternal. They reached out a couple of weeks ago, and it's like a higher end experience for those who want to run and train for the rest of their lives,
Hmm.
like many of us do. And they made some comments around being able to support me in this transition that I was quite impressed with. The leadership around their CEO, or the support around their CEO, like he's a very strong leader. He was at Strava, then he started the Athletic, and people love working for him. And he's clearly a great people leader. And he made some comments to me that gave me the confidence that I needed to um, take this leap.
Hmm.
And I don't know that, like, it was once he said some things to me, it was like I would be an idiot to not bet on myself. And his vote of confidence, and not just like yeah, 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 I believe in you, but like the gravity behind how he said it and what was included in that, um that was really what gave me the confidence to do it. um but it was really just like a groundswell of people like that supporting the fact that like I simply must do this, and um that I had too much to give, and not enough time to give it. My thing is like a mentor of mine, someone I respect a lot, told me that my Michael Maz, he as many know him as, lives in Austin, Texas, and he was like he summarized my what I'm good at. It's creating and capturing value for other people. And he was like, you're too good at this to not do it," kind of a thing. And the
Hmm.
impact that I can have on other people, or that I want to have on other people, he's like, you just like have to do it. And so again, it was just like a bunch of people expressing their confidence, their desire, their support, like all this stuff in me. And then I'm like, okay, well, here's my imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head again. Like, why me? Why do these people think that I'm capable of doing all this stuff? Like, and sometimes I'm like, anyway, that's like a an ugly demon that many of us fight.
Yeah.
Um, that comes up every so often. But yeah, it was just like a groundswell of support, um, that I was happily, maybe not surprised, but like it just felt awesome. And yeah, here we are. I'm a month and a half in, and I haven't had an ounce of regret.
Yeah, that's awesome. So here's the million-dollar question. If you didn't have that support, where people are saying, "Hey, you know what, Jonathan, you got to do this. This is your sort of destiny." If it was just sort of you in your room, that you want to do this, but you didn't have that support, do you think you still would have pulled the trigger?
I don't even want to entertain that thought because I don't know it. No, I don't think I would have because
Mm,
it was that support that enabled me to do it, and it was talking through it with so many people,
yeah.
um, that enabled me to do it. It's funny. I went for a run with Kara Goucher on the day that I decided to actually make the change. And she was telling me about how she left her situation with Nike and signed with Wazelle and bet on herself and took all these chances. And she was like, ironically, I was the same age you are right now, 34. And she just talked me through how she left um, like a really comfortable role. Like we talked on my podcast, and she shared that she was making, three to $400,000 a year. That's a nice, that's a nice salary. That you can live quite well anywhere in the country on that.
Sure.
That's more than most people need. And she was like, and I, I walked away from it, and it opened so many doors, and the belief in herself and her, like, anyway, it was just like a lot of serendipitous things happening all at once, or maybe it's not serendipity if it's um all happening at once, or whatever. But it was just like a bunch of these conversations from people I so deeply respect that I don't know that if I didn't have that support, if I could have done it on
Hmm.
my own and made that change. And I, like I said, I don't even want to go down that rabbit hole because I do have that support, and I did make that change.
Sure, sure. Um, so did you give yourself a time frame to quote unquote make it, whether that be okay, I can pay my bills? You hear all those stories coming out of Hollywood, right? Like, I'm going to move to Hollywood, or I'm going to move to New York City, and I'm going to work as an actor, and I'm giving myself 1 year. And if I don't make it, I'm going back to wherever I came from. Was there anything like that for you where you gave yourself a timeline at all?
The only timeline I gave myself was, so I was going to Tahoe for Broken Arrow Trail Con in Western States, and I was staying at my friend Vivek's house in Truckee. And I said to Vivek, "Do not let me in your house unless I've quit my job." And
Okay.
I told him this in mid May, and I was planning to do it on like June 4th or 5th or whatever the 2 weeks 2 weeks prior to June 18th was. I ended up doing it a week early, so I did get to Vivek's house having already done that and held up my end of the bargain. I didn't put any sort of time frame on. I'm gonna give myself this chance. Like I said, I waited so long that it's predictable what happens next for
Hmm.
me. Like I modeled out my finances, and like I've already booked enough deals and um, structured things in a way that I could make more money this year than I did last year. And that's not the goal. The goal was always to pursue things that fire me up,
Yeah.
and have freedom of my calendar, so that I can do what I want when I want it. And to me, that's what freedom is. Freedom
Yeah.
is the ability to go for a trail run at 10 a.m. and not feel like someone's breathing down my neck, or it's a Tuesday and it's a beautiful day. My girlfriend's off work; she's a nurse, so she has a random schedule, and like it's like, hey, want to go to the mountains? Like I want to be able to say yes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And to me, that's freedom, in the way that I've been pursuing it, or that's wealth. That's that's the reason that I'm chasing something so that I can be in a position like that. Um, And now I've forgotten your question, but I think I've answered it.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was a great answer. Um, so certainly starting and scaling a business, I mean, it is a long game, right? You can't think of, okay, just the day in front of you. So how is that principle of kind of playing the long game? And you've already alluded to it, in some of your answers, but how have you sort of focused on playing the long game with your business strategy, with your podcast and your consulting and things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing the podcast for 6 years. I put out 380 something episodes, and I don't think that I could be in a position that I would be in a position to have made this bet if my podcasts were 5 episodes in and
Hmm.
I hadn't booked brand deals before. So I'm not starting from zero. I'm starting from a few years in. And to me, that's the takeaway here. It's like, don't quit your job and then start the thing, or don't if you want to be a running coach and be a full-time running coach, like don't quit your job with zero clients,
Yeah,
right? Like you have to build a base. And my podcast is called For the Long Run because um, it's both a metaphor and literal. I release it on Fridays so that you can listen to it on your long run. Um, but also the takeaway is that nothing worthwhile occurs without long-term progress, right?
yeah,
Like the way we get better at running is to stack a brick and a brick and a brick and stack brick after brick after brick and string together days, weeks, months, seasons. And that's how we improve, right? There are the little details of we do workouts and long runs and strides and all the stuff that matters from a running economy standpoint. But ultimately it's like stay healthy for a long period of time and you will improve.
yeah,
And that's how I look at business, right? Stay alive, put in the work, and do the things on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you'll get somewhere interesting. And similar to how if you're training for a marathon over a 16-week period, you can miss a run or three. Just like if you're building a business, you can miss a day or 10 or whatever. Um, and removing one or two of those bricks is not going to knock the house down. But if you're missing every other brick, you're not gonna like your house is totally unstable. So again, it's the longevity, it's the consistency. That's really the only thing that matters in the long run. For the long run, I get $1 every time I say for. I'm just kidding. Um, that's the part that matters, right? Like doing the thing day in and day out, and getting there.
yeah. I think, after all these years of running USCA, that's the thing that I don't think I really appreciated at first, but I certainly do now is consistency. Like you said, you can miss a day or, do whatever, but and I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people aren't more successful because, most of business, I mean, if I'm being quite honest, at least my business, it's pretty boring. There's not a lot of sexy things to it, a couple, you'll sometimes get a big win or something exciting here and there, but a lot of it, for lack of a better word, is grunt work, right? And it's staying consistent. It's staying, keeping your North Star and just keeping going. And I think that's really what I found to be sort of the secret, if there is, to success. There's no secret. You just have to stay consistent and put in the work, right?
Exactly. If you loaded all of my episodes into ChatGPT and asked what is the outcome of all of these conversations, which I actually have done, um, you could have a conversation with the brain of For the Long Run. It would basically say exactly that. Like there
Hmm.
is no secret. You must be consistent.
Yeah. Yep.
And struggles and roadblocks and road bumps, speed bumps occur, but
Yeah.
keep moving forward. That's the summary of 400 episodes.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So that for sure. You've already talked about some other, advice that you would give to people, kind of starting off. Any other, specific advice that you might give to someone, like mentioned, definitely have some clients first, or athletes first, just don't go jumping and try to get them. Any other advice for someone who's coaches who are looking to quit their full-time job and start their own venture? Anything else that we kind of haven't discussed already?
Yeah, I think that having the right people in your corner is really important. People who aren't just cheerleaders for you, but people who are willing to tell you when you might be, veering off in the wrong direction, or hey, that idea is actually kind of crazy, maybe don't pursue that. It's kind of why we're starting this community, the huddle. Like we want to create this board of advisors for everyone in a place where um, the work is often so isolating or lonely. As a solopreneur, I think there's a lot of value to building in public and asking for help, and
Yeah.
understanding that if you're having a challenge, somebody also has navigated this before. And it's like why people enjoy when other people post about running injuries, right? It's like
Yeah.
relatable to see somebody struggling, and it helps normalize feeling like shit sometimes. And the same thing happens in business. And so, yeah, it's about assembling some predictable monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue that enables you to stay afloat, but also having the North Star identified, and then the people who are going to help keep you within the buoys when you might lose sight a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. Couldn't agree more. Um, Anything that you wish you knew before going full time with what you're doing, again, between your consulting and run along um, labs, anything you wish you knew before making that jump that you maybe you know now, or that you're still a little unsure if you actually know it now? Because I know there for me there was a ton of things.
I mean, it's only been 5 weeks, so
Yeah.
I guess I'm surprised with how quickly this new normal has become a new
Mm,
normal. And I've like fallen into like I was kind of afraid of change. Um, and I've just fallen into a brand new routine. Um, the one piece that I would recommend is ensuring some sort of structure in your day. And so, like, I had always worked East Coast hours while living on Mountain Time, and I'm basically still doing that um, to a point. Like, I try not to take meetings after 3 o'clock if I can avoid it, and I start my workday at 6:30, and I go for a run at 7 or 8. Um, and so, keeping some sort of structure is helpful. It's like pro athletes talk about how sometimes it's hard to get out for the run when what they need to do in the day is run, eat, recover, sleep. And so having the stability and structure of, well, this is my routine, this is what I do, but I have more freedom and flexibility to adjust it as needed. Maybe it's not something that surprised me, but it's something that like I would suggest to others as well.
got it. Makes complete sense. Um, and lastly, we hear this a lot from people that are looking to start their coaching, either as a side gig or a full-time job, that it's not the right time. It's just not the right time. I need to wait. And what I found is it's funny. We have a 7-year-old, myself and my wife, and you hear that all the time. There's never a perfect time. There's always. And so I wonder if what you found with your situation sort of rings true to that. There's never a perfect time per se where all your ducks are going to be in a row. But if maybe you could just shed some light on that within, again, your own personal experience.
Yeah, there's never a perfect time. Like there were projects and deals that I wanted to close prior to leaving, and that didn't happen. It was perfect timing in terms of like I showed up in Tahoe for myself and my brand, and that timing was truly perfect.
Mm,
Like I just posted on LinkedIn about leaving my job, and dozens of people asked me, "Hey, what are you up to?" Or like it led to opportunity with that like perfectly planned timing. And I don't want to say I got lucky with the timing because I have been wanting to make a change for a while, um, but never actually like acting on that because it never felt like the right time. And
mm,
so it got to a point for me where I was like, it will never be the right time. So why not now?
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, if I could sort of sum up kind of like what you did when you asked ChatGPT about all your episodes, if I could sum up all this, I mean, it sounds like it's really, bet on yourself, like, I mean, do your due diligence, be prepared, but bet on yourself.
Yeah, bet on yourself is something I've said to myself a lot. I've said it to other people a lot lately too. Um, because nobody else is going to bet on you if you can't bet on yourself.
Yeah, good point.
And to your point, like the time will never be perfect. There's always an excuse, and many of us will try and fail, and many of us will try and be successful. And what's the line? Like it's better to try and fail than to never have tried at all. Like
Yeah,
whether that's related to running a marathon or building a business or whatever. Like I would much rather see someone try something and come up short than wonder, well, what could have been.
yeah,
And I became too curious about what was behind the door, um, to ignore it anymore.
yeah.
And that's at that point I had to make a change.
Yeah. I mean, if I, from my personal experience, I mean, that was one of the biggest drivers for me was that, I'd had this idea for USCA for a long time, never pulled the trigger. And there were a few things that kind of led me to pulling the trigger. But I think the biggest thing, I always kind of look down the road. I'm like, God, what if I'm 80 or 90? I'm on my deathbed and I'm like, shit, that would like just literally eat away at me. And it would be more than I could take. I'm like, so, win, fail, lose, whatever. I have to do it. Like, and I'd much to your point, I'd much rather fail, tried it, maybe I try it again or whatever, but then having never even ventured there in the first place.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, well, awesome. Well, thank you so much. For our listeners, please go check out Long Run Labs, Jonathan Levitt's podcast. If any of our listeners want a discount on any of our certifications, you can use the code ATE75. And yeah, thank you for the great chat. This was awesome. I think this certainly resonated with me, and I'm sure it will with a lot of our coaches as well, because again, so many of our coaches are in that exact same place where they're, full-time job, they want to do this, something they're really passionate about, but they're not quite sure how to pull the trigger, when to make the move. So this has been super, super helpful. So thank you so much for your time on this.
Amazing. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to chat and kind of unpack some of the stuff that's been living in my head for a while, and talk through it.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you with all the best with the podcast and all your advising. It sounds like you've got a lot of really cool stuff going on.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks, Rich.
All right.
Rick.
Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan.